Hi, it's Carolee from Wise Woman Ways, and today I want to talk to you about one of the teas that I drink. Um, it's a real rainy day here in Alaska, so I'm inside having my afternoon tea, and actually, it's not technically a tea that I'm drinking. A tea is something that you steep for a few minutes, and I'm actually drinking an infusion, and this particular infusion is stinging nettle. And there's probably some oat straw in this one too, but I'm not going to be talking about the oat straw in this video. I'm only going to focus on the stinging nettle. And here's a jar of it that I dried um, a few months back. And stinging nettle is a wild herb that I learned about a few years back. In my mid-30s, I was diagnosed with premature symptomatic menopause. And I had really severe symptoms with this. I had hair loss, such extreme hair loss to the point that I was diagnosed with alopecia. And I'll put a link below. You can read about my hair loss story on my website. Um, and I had severe migraine headaches 20 to 30 days out of the month. I mean, I was on shots I was injecting and all kinds of pain medication, and I was also on synthetic hormones. I was really, without the medications, I was really struggling to function, and so I eventually ended up on a lot of medication. And I'm not opposed to medication, by the way. I think modern medications can be really useful, and for me, they were great because they relieved the symptoms immediately and they gave me the strength and the focus I needed to learn a lot more about natural ways to heal these problems, which took me a while. It took me a few years to really learn how to do that. But now I know what food to eat and what herbs to use. I'm not on any medication anymore. So, by the way, in my mid-30s, I was also diagnosed with arthritis. So both alopecia and arthritis are autoimmune disorders. And I'll be doing another video about my journey with autoimmune disorders. But my hormones and autoimmune disorders, you know, have really responded well to natural healing. And so stinging nettle is something I learned about years ago. And I used to buy it online, and I bought it from a company called Frontier Naturals. And I'll include a link down below with that. I got it on Amazon. At the time, I was living in Los Angeles where I couldn't wild forage for herbs. But now I live in Alaska, and it was lovely to find stinging nettle in abundance here. And I, I gather these early in the spring and summer. There's probably like a window of a month where I think they're good. I don't like them when they get much taller than a foot off the ground. They grow to about 3 or 4 feet, and I like to harvest them fairly young. And my first summer that I did this, I didn't have a whole lot of luck. I actually harvested them and tried to hang them from that chandelier, and I tied them up there with twine. But that didn't work very well because the twine fibers kind of intertwined with the herbs when I tried to untangle it and untie it. And so I probably would have been okay, but I ended up throwing that whole batch away. And then I read more this summer about how to harvest it, and I came across this great website that said that they just put it in a bag, and they don't hang it, and they don't put it on a drying rack at all, which has actually worked really well. A lot of herbs you need to hang or put on a drying rack because they're full of moisture and they'll mildew or get mold in there, which you do need to be careful of. But stinging nettle is a really fibrous plant, and it dries almost like a branch. So you don't want to put a lot in the bag, but when you put it in there, it just sort of dries as it is. It doesn't deflate down as it dries because there's not a lot of moisture in it to start with. And so you leave it in the bags, you gather a couple bags, throw it in a closet or something, and then after a few weeks it's dry. And then I just strip the leaves from the stems. And then I'm not quite done with this bag. I actually also like to use the stems, and so I take some scissors. I just haven't finished. There's a whole bag of stems here. And I like to cut up the stems. Um, so anyway, I want to explain why stinging nettle is so useful for both arthritis and hormones and alopecia. So it's really useful for alopecia because um, alopecia, although it's an autoimmune disorder, which is caused by inflammation. And when you have inflammation, that inflammation, I have the arthritis in my hip and in my leg, but inflammation, is systemic and also in my scalp, and it's too much DHT. So if you look up the DHT hormone and how that causes baldness, you can find out more about that. But stinging nettle is a DHT blocker. And so it's just really great for any kind of hair loss. It's also really good for inflammation, and so it's been really useful for both the arthritis and the alopecia. And it's when you have autoimmune disorders, they're finding more and more that autoimmune disorders are caused by not caused, but it causes sort of a sensitivity to lectins. And so many plants, all plants probably have lectins in them. And so I'm really careful about what plants I eat. And I actually don't eat a wide variety of plants, but I do okay with wild herbs. And again, I'll do another video explaining my journey with autoimmune disorders. But I love to eat wild herbs because there's such an abundance of healing properties, not just nutrition, but healing properties. And so if I'm going to eat something that has lectins in it, it needs to be so very nutrient dense, so that I can really get the nutritional property, the healing property, and I really want to get as few lectins in my system as possible. So stinging nettle's been just an amazing herb, so healing for me, so yummy. I love foraging it and sauteing it up with butter and eating it with my eggs in the morning. And I love this tea. I'm having my little tea here. I always like my little tea ritual. So yeah, I can drink my infusion warm or I can drink it cold. Today I'm drinking it warm because it's cold and rainy outside. Anyway, I really encourage you to explore the use of herbs and really fall in love with stinging nettle because it's an amazing, healing, yummy, really beautiful medicinal herb. So go out and learn to enjoy it.